This is a depressing time of year. Deer season's closed. We got nothing to do out the wait a minute. We got all sorts of things we can do out in the woods, and as a matter of fact, now is when you stack your odds for next year's buck. That is exactly what we're going to be talking today on Growing Big TV. We talk a ton about creating high odds, low impact setups. To be most effective, you have to match your improvements to the habitat. Western habitat, heck of a lot different than Midwestern habitat. He's not putting all that energy into building up his antlers until his body's taken care of. The overwhelming majority of the tips that I come up with are issues I'm running into while I'm out here working. Okay, deer season's over. Now, for whatever reason, we hunters and managers, we head to the woods to yank our cams. Don't. This is an invaluable opportunity. Instead of yanking the cams, now is when we move them. Now is when we move them to those higher impact locations, because season's done. You know what, if we momentarily bump the deer off our ground, no harm, no foul. The reason we want to do this is twofold. One, this is the first chance we have to start game planning our hit lists and our no-shoot lists for next year. You know, the bucks that we get pictures of this time of year, odds are really good they're going to be around again next season. And no, that's not mission critical, but it really is nice when you know that I got Mr. Big. I got something to be excited for next year. Or, ho man, that young buck with all that potential, he made it. He made it. The neighbors didn't kill him, which they have every right in the world to do so, but they didn't. What we did worked. We got him coming up for next year. It's an exciting, frankly, this is one of the two most exciting times to swap chips for me is after season's done, so I know what I got for next year, and so I know what I actually have on the ground at that time. Now, during season, we want to keep these babies in low impact locations. You know, we wouldn't go running out to our same tree stand day after day after day after day after day, no matter what the wind direction is, no matter what else, to hunt. Why would we do the same with our cameras when it comes to checking it? Don't. We need to treat them seriously. This time of year, though, after season's done, now we get them back in those areas that we try to stay out of during season. Why? Because we want to know how the deer are utilizing our ground. How are they using that point? How are they using that ridge system? How are they using those ditches? You know, how are they using those bedding areas? The more intel we can get now, the better off we are for next year. And remember, sure, the food sources may change, therefore the patterns may change, but the topography doesn't change. For the most part, the edge types don't change. Therefore, deer movement continues to be essentially the same when they're going from point A to point B through those areas. So the intel we can get now really helps us later. Get those cameras out. Shift them around to those high locations, figure out what your hit lists are and what you have for deer movement through those areas. Unravel those mysteries now. Growing Big TV is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. REDNECK Blinds, the best hunting blinds on the planet. Furminator, the best food plot implement on earth. Hunter Safety Systems, saving lives is what we do. And by Antler King, bigger bucks, healthier deer. This segment of Growing Big TV is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. Taking advantage of that window where we don't have to worry about disturbing the deer is an incredible learning experience, as you all now know. That said, that's just the start of our projects. What we're going to be talking about next is a whole bunch of stuff we can do to be in position
for next year's success.
As habitat managers, it has literally been pounded into our heads that you have to spend money, you have to put in food plots. It's food plots, it's food plot equipment, chemicals, all these things that, hit us in the pocketbook. Luckily, there's a heck of a lot of stuff we can do that doesn't cost us a cent. And frankly, now is the time of year where we really put that into play. It's late winter, early spring, it's snow covered in some areas, just generally hazy and icky and a little bit cold most everywhere. Now is when we stack the odds for next year's buck. Get in there, scout those sanctuaries. Doesn't cost us a cent. The sanctuary doesn't cost us a cent, and getting out there and looking it over doesn't cost us anything. We want to go out there this time of year because by the time deer season comes around, you know what? The disturbance is well long forgotten, and we need to know what's going on inside there. We need to know how the deer are utilizing it. Do we need to get in there with a chainsaw and improve it a little bit, or is it good to go? How are they utilizing it? Is it like we want them to? Are they bedding in there, doing a little bit of feeding, but not overly too much, and transitioning into the areas where we're hunting? How exactly are they getting in and out in this sanctuary? How are they traveling in this sanctuary? These are all things that they're clues, they're puzzle pieces to help us put the master jigsaw puzzle together and fill it with a tagged buck. Now is when we get out there with a chainsaw. We create those bedding areas if we need to. We look at our edge feathering. Those areas where the deer are coming in and out of that we don't want them to, we can get in there and plug them now. Those blockades. The blockades need to be... It is very, very difficult to stop deer from going somewhere where they want to go. Okay, but we can encourage them to travel the way we want. Blockades done with a chainsaw aren't going to stop deer from crossing, but we discourage them. Are there areas where it's too easy for them to cross that we don't want them to? Now's the time to get in there and plug it. Make those areas where we want them to cross nice and easy. Those tree stands, we cannot leave them. We can't leave them hung the entire time. The trees, they continue to grow. As those trees grow, they put more and more stress on the stands themselves. So we need to either take the darn thing down, which is what's highly recommended, or at a minimum, loosen it. Tear your ground apart. Get the chainsaw work you need done. Figure out how deer are utilizing that ground. Get our stands prepped. Those are the types of things we need to focus on this time of year. We focus on them now, it's going to pay off with filled buck tags later in the season. I know this is not the greatest time in the entire year to be out playing in the woods. I get it, okay? But now is the money time. Now is when you figure out how deer are utilizing the ground, how we can encourage them to utilize it more in a beneficial manner for us. Make sure we're safe by getting those tree stands out of the woods. Put the time in now and it's going to pay off for you later in filled buck tags.
Now that we have our winter chores wrapped up, now things really start getting fun, because now is when you have the opportunity. The snow just melted. We have all that rut sign just from last year laid out in front of us. And you know what? There was a reason Mr. Big was bedding in this area here. There was a reason he was scraping there. There was a reason he was feeding there. And there was a reason that he was chasing those does around over there. Even if he's gone, you can almost guarantee that sands, humongous environmental changes, the next one's going to be standing in line ready to repeat. That is what we're going to be covering next.
History repeats itself. And those that do not learn from history are generally doomed to repeat its mistakes. That applies to deer hunting every bit as much as it does to the real world. In that there are certain things that Mr. Big wants and needs. Habitat generally doesn't change that much. Sure, there may be some logging on public ground. Crops may change on farm ground. A new group of hunters may move in and shift things around. But generally speaking, the topography doesn't change. Unless you go ahead and cut down a bunch of trees, you know what? There's going to be woods back behind me here 20, 30 years from now. Every bit as much as there is today. Because of bucks specifically wanting and needing certain things, your more mature dominant bucks, they tend to select the best of the best. Okay? And they tend to have other deer waiting in line to take their place. That's where spring scouting really comes in handy. Now, you get to, as a matter of fact, anytime from postseason on through spring green up. Now, you get out there, you find those rubs. They stick out like a turd in a punch bowl right now because all of this green vegetation's gone. We're talking winter and before spring green up. So those rubs, they stand out more during that phase than any other. Same with the scrapes. When you're out there looking for scrapes, try to find those great big ones preferably with a bowl-shaped appearance. Either the size or the bowl, either one of them tells you that, this scrape's been worked time and time and time again. Scrapes are, they're the whitetail world's equivalent of human billboards. They're meant to advertise to a whole bunch of other deer. Therefore, the best locations for billboards tend to be the same every year, same with scrapes. And they stand out really, really well after leaf off. As long as that licking branch is still in place, odds are pretty darn good that scrape that's like this with that bowl-shaped appearance is going to look like that again the next coming year. If that licking branch is gone, you know what? You can go ahead and attach one. The more we can piece this stuff together, the more we find that these patterns, they repeat themselves year after year after year. And how do we get on top of them? Me personally, I get on top of them from spring scouting. And when I'm out there in the spring and I'm looking for rubs, trails, scrapes, bedding areas, you know what? I'm always asking why. Why are the bucks scraping so hard right here? Why is there a string of rubs going down that point? You find that bed, when you find it during the off-season, squat down in it and look around. Look around and ask yourself why. Why out of every place on this entire ground that buck could lay is he laying in this one spot? The more you do that, the more you anticipate what the animals are going to do year after year after year, even after they're gone, the ones that are leaving the sign. Because deer have specific wants and needs. Habitat doesn't change that much from year to year. Therefore, if that knob was the best place to bed yet last year, you know what? It's probably the best place to bed again this year. Spring scouting, off-season scouting, anytime from when season close on through spring green up, really is unbelievably huge for me to set the scale for success for the next year.
Grown Big TV is brought to you by Chestnut Hill Outdoors, RECONYX, see what you've been missing, and by Wildlife Research Center, the gold standard. We're here today with Matt Arndt of Matt's Healthy Woods and Wildlife, and what we're going to talk about today is Matt is a certified forester.
That's correct.
And he actually specializes, his business specializes in, please correct me if I'm wrong, sustainable forestry practices that put money in your pocket while benefiting whitetails.
That's correct.
Tell me, Matt, why does a person want, what is involved in getting a forester? Why does somebody want to?
What's involved in getting a forester is finding the right person. There's a certain level of trust that you need there, and I'll be the first to tell you that not every forester will give you the same advice. So the advice that I'd give to the landowner is if you don't trust the person you're working with, if you think that their goals are not the exact same direction that you want to go, feel free to reach out and find somebody that you're comfortable with, because if you're not comfortable working with the forester that you've got, and trust that they're guiding you in the direction that you want to go, there's always going to be that skepticism. So
Now,
go ahead.
I understand why a person wants one, but please, for our viewers, what actually will a good forester do for them, and why don't they just go out and hire a logger and turn them loose?
Strictly for the selling timber, the timber harvest aspect, when I mark a timber sale, I'm looking out for the long-term health and productivity of that forest. It's not how much money can I put in your pocket today. It's making sure that I'm improving the overall quality of that forest long-term with every harvest, using that harvest as a management tool as opposed to just a get-rich-quick scheme. So you can, if you cut the wrong trees at the wrong time, you can hurt your bottom line long-term. You can hurt the quality of the forest. You can hurt the habitat quality of the forest long-term. So looking at the timber harvest from a management perspective and a long-term perspective rather than a short-term moneymaker.
Exactly. It's not much unlike not much unlike regular hunters. We can go ahead and we can keep within reason, keep bumping our deer population up, bump it up, but that comes at a cost. It comes at the long-term health of that habitat.
For the same reason you wouldn't shoot a really nice, pretty 2-year-old buck, you don't want to cut a really nice oak tree or walnut before it's actually mature.
So what you specialize, what one of your primary focuses, you play the long game.
Correct.
You're not looking at just how much money can I put in this guy's pocket today and how much money can I put in mine. You're trying to, okay, how can we take this woodlot and shape it so it is the most productive going forward while putting money in your pocket and improving the habitat for wildlife?
Yeah, and the short-term gain has to be considered, and it has to be considered for the loggers also, because if a given timber harvest isn't profitable for a logger, you're not going to find anybody to cut it, so therefore it's the trees that you want gone are not going to get cut. So it all has to come together, and it all has to be considered.
And what a person does is, I would assume it's the same as selecting an outfitter. What you do is you go through, you contact a bunch, you do your research, you then take it a step further, contact a bunch of their references, their past clients, make sure that this fit is good. Now, once that fit is good, I'm sure I know it varies slightly from forester to forester, but what ends up when it comes for timber harvests, which is what a lot of our viewers are going to be interested in, what actually happens is you get a percent of timber sales.
Percent of timber sale that's the standard fee structure. I typically working by myself. I do everything on an hourly basis to separate myself, my invoice amount from the total sale amount. Just in the case of that tree that's really too young to cut, but it's still worth a lot of money now. Yeah. I don't want there to be incentive for me to mark that tree to make myself some extra money. So when you have a larger crew, it's a lot more difficult to do it that way. So we do also do some percentage sales,
right.
But that's the standard is a percentage.
And so, okay, the forester comes out, he marks, or she for that matter, and then the forester also generally coordinates the timber sale itself as well.
Yeah, if the forester handles the timber sale, they'll mark and scale all the trees that the loggers are allowed to cut, put together contracts controlling the sale, find the buyer, handle the contract signing and negotiations in that, monitor the harvest as it's ongoing to make sure all the contract clauses are being followed, and a checkout at the end, and that protects both the landowner and the logger.
Yeah. So to put a nice little ribbon on this, what a quality forester is going to do for you is first they're going to make darn sure that they understand your goals. Okay. Then they will go ahead and within reason tailor their recommendations to those goals. Go out and mark the timber, coordinate the timber sale, and very important, monitor the logging process to make sure that what's actually supposed to happen, and in the end oversee all the money coming into the client's pocket.
Correct. And quite honestly, more often than not, when I get a call out of the blue, somebody interested in selling timber, they just don't have enough timber to sell. So that's a big part also is telling you, no, there's not enough to cut now. If you do some management work and give it 10 or 15 or 20 years, then you'll be ready for a good sale. But there's an awful lot of times that the only way to manage a harvest in the current condition is to high grade the timber, to cut the biggest and the best and leave the rest, which is detrimental long term.
Exactly. Well, beautiful. I'm sure for you, this seems like, geez, we just wasted 5 minutes. I'm telling you, this type of information, there's a heck of a lot of people out there that are hungry as heck for it, and they don't know where to go. Thank you, Matt.
Absolutely.
As you can see, there's all sorts of projects that we can do during the off season that frankly transition it from being a relatively depressing time to be a truly exciting opportunity to stack our odds for success for next season. You follow what we talked about today, and I can all but promise you that next season is going to be better than the last. Thank you so much for watching Growing Big TV. And also remember, you want more information on this? We got you covered. We've got you on social media, we've got you on TV, we got you in print. And we, frankly, are here to try to help you become better hunters and better managers.